We have a number of tools designed to help you. This first one is called the ArborJet Pest Reference Guide. This is the kind of cheat sheet that I love. And when I first came to ArborJet, we didn't have this thing. So I created it. So it lists the pest or the disease. It's a multi-page document. This is just a small piece of one. The scientific names of the pests, the trees that typically it attacks, and which of our key products are recommended for treatment. So this helps you to really narrow it down once you know what the pest is. Okay, I've got brown tail moth. This is what it attacks. I can use AceJet. I can use Azisol or Triage on it. So that's one pest sheet that can be downloaded. It can also be ordered. We can ship it to you directly if necessary as well. Another one that we've done is we've created 5 regional pest planners. Actually, we have 6. One is in Hawaii, but I don't believe there are any lawn doctors in Hawaii right now. So this happens to be the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic version. We've also got a Southeast, South Central version, Midwest, High Plains, and West. We identified the top 10 insects or diseases. The green or the darker green shows the time of peak activity and when the treatment windows are best or moderate, and the timing of them, and a brief explanation of both what the pest is and what we recommend the products to be. And we do that slightly differently in each marketplace. So you can also download these off of the internet at arborjet.com to get the information you need there as well. Again, to help you with some of the key pests in your marketplace beyond what we'll talk about tomorrow. These are some of the things that we work on and that we run into all across the country. You can take a quick look at these and see if you recognize some from your marketplace. These are some of the ones that cause the most problems. There's a pretty significant number of these that are actually in the boring family. That invasive shot-hole borer on the right is in a sycamore or a London plane in California. And nonetheless, these are some of the things that we can not only help you with, but also help to stop from killing trees. So let's get into the boring insects. These are insects that tunnel around and dig just beneath the bark of the tree, typically in what is described as the xylem, and we'll get into some tree physiology tomorrow. And they disrupt the water moving capacity of the tree and also the food movement within the tree, which typically will cause the tree to die. Many times they will introduce diseases to the tree, which we talked about earlier. These are insect vector diseases. And so they add additional pressure. We'll be talking today about southern pine beetle, Ips engraver beetles, emerald ash borer, invasive shot-hole borer, spruce beetles, bronze birch borer, and two-line chestnut borer. But these are some of the major ones in the country that we are able to help you with. So let's just briefly talk about emerald ash borer. This one's been around for a number of years now, and it's one that is one of the most serious pests we now deal with in the United States. It is something that we can control. It only attacks ash trees. Well, it actually attacks white fringe trees, but they're more of a bush and not too many people have them. It's more common in the South, but it's rare and it's not something that people have a lot of on their property. The important thing to understand is that not all treatments can give you the same results. There are all kinds of people promising all kinds of things with emerald ash borer. I will say that the result is that we've been in more cities treating more tens of thousands of trees than any other product because it's really simple. Our products work. The use of triage is effective for 2 to 3 years at a considerable saving and a saving of the tree at the same time because it actually controls EAB. You can actually treat from May all the way through October. Because it lasts 2 to 3 years, it will protect the tree as soon as the pest begins its feeding stage, which is the larva of the tree, of the pest, excuse me. The larvae feed on the phloem under the bark. They cause disruption of the water and the nutrient flow, much as I described most larva borers do. The adults feed on the leaves, but it's generally not lethal. And the adults fly typically when black locusts are in bloom. So if you have black locusts in your community, that's when the adults are flying to lay new eggs on new trees in your area. There's a pretty simple life cycle. It's complete metamorphosis as it is in many insects. The adults, they hatch as a peak around June. It depends on degree days. Generally about 800 degree days gives you your massive peak, but it starts at 500 and goes to 1100 degree days. The adults mate, as you can see in the top left-hand corner there, and they produce about 10 eggs per location, and they typically hide them under the places in the bark where it's starting to break up and get a little crusty as compared to the smooth bark of the younger parts of the tree. The larvae hatch immediately, and they will grow and tunnel through into the bark, and they continue to expand, going through 4 instars in the process. And you can see the larva getting larger and larger and larger. The key to remember with these things is that the bigger they get, the more damage they do. Used to be a time where people would say, well, don't treat in the fall, you can only treat in the spring. That's because some of the products that used to be used were only effective in the spring. This product will stop the insects when they're feeding, which is critical. The last thing you want to do is let an insect continue to feed and get larger and bigger and ignore it and wait till next year because some book somewhere told you to wait. The overwinter is a pre-pupa, which is what you can see on the far left of the pupa. It's sort of half creamy colored, looking more like a larva than an adult. And then they hatch temperature dependent. There are some eggs that hatch later, and they may stay as larvae for 2 seasons. So in early outbreaks, outlier infestations, we'll sometimes see a larva in the tree doing damage for up to 2 years instead of a single year. The key to remember with emerald ash borer is the control is extremely effective. In fact, we can save trees that may have as much as 40% canopy loss. I've actually saved trees with more, but I make sure that people know that there's no guarantee that we can actually save a tree with that much damage because there's so much internal damage we may be unaware of. Some of the signs and symptoms you'll see here are thinning of the canopy and smaller leaves, like you can see in the center top. So that's one of our first indications we've got a problem. If adults are present from the previous year, they just may not be that plentiful. You'll see, like on the right-hand side, notching of the edges of the leaves. That's the adult feeding that spring after they hatch. So typically in June, you'll start to see that on the new leaves. As things progress and damage expands, the bottom left-hand side, excuse me, you'll see what we call epicormic sprouting. And epicormic sprouting is really this simple: the tree attempting to save itself. So it sends out new sprouts, trying to grow. And because the damage starts near the top of the tree, this is typically found in the center of the tree in a grouping from about 8 feet up to about 15 feet. You'll see a denser area of wood there. Eventually, as the insects continue to feed, woodpeckers will seek them out. They listen, they can hear them under the bark, and they start trying to strip bark off the trees. That top left-hand corner is what we'd call blonding. And you can see that. In fact, I was in my neighborhood the other day driving down a street, and I could see new blonding occurring from this last year, which tells me that EAB is now in my part of Massachusetts. So this is what it's referred to as. Once the insects are dead, the woodpeckers can no longer hear them. The woodpeckers are no longer searching for them. And in fact, the woodpeckers will not eat dead or dying caterpillars or larvae. So it starts at the top, progressing downward. By the time the exit holes, which are D-shaped, can be seen, it's usually rather late for the tree to survive. Excuse me. So one of the interesting things about emerald ash borer is its serpentine pattern of larval development. Typically, it will work its way down the tree, and in working down the tree, it will get larger and larger, and the galleries will increase in size as well. 1 second here. My apologies. Okay. The next topic I wanted to talk on is southern pine beetle. It's almost a false thing to call it southern pine beetle anymore because, as you can see, it covers a huge range of territory. Depending upon the year and the amount of outbreak, it can go all the way up into the Midwest to lower Ohio and Indiana, and it has been found as far north as Connecticut. So it's been quite a large range. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what the signs and symptoms are, because we can give you 2 years of control against this pest. It goes through, the insect goes through a complete metamorphosis. So that means it starts as an egg, goes to a larva, then it pupates and becomes an adult. That's strongly influenced by temperature. So as it gets warmer, the speed or the life cycle increases. They, like so many other larvae, feed in the phloem area, and the eggs are deposited in that area where they can then hatch, feed, grow, and then eventually become an adult, which exits the tree and starts the whole process over. Eggs can hatch in as little as 3 to 11 days. The larvae go through 4 different instars in as little as 2 weeks, so they're very fast. Their larval galleries girdle the trunk. That's not a surprise. That's what most borers do. They go through pupation, and within 1 to 3 weeks, they're ready to become an adult. The young adults, which are typically yellowish in color, will progress from white to dark, and within 2 weeks, they have gone through their full development. And they'll exit the tree through the bark. The sites that you're seeing on these trees with the sap, these are the tree's attempts to push out the insects trying to get in, the adults. But when they exit the tree, they've already caused enough damage that typically they'll leave some sawdust instead of any kind of sap oozing out. So sap oozing out is typically from the entry wounds that these insects cause as they attack the new tree. And as you see over on the left-hand bottom, that is what they refer to as a salt and pepper appearance. The tree's flagging, it's been attacked, probably a first generation of attack at that point. A good indication you've got a serious problem. So the needle color change that I just described is usually the first thing you're going to see. And in that first stage, the needle color can appear that lighter green or faded or sort of a salt and pepper appearance. Upon examination of the tree, you might start to see these young white to yellow soft pitch tubes, like you see here beneath the dime. These are the entrance points, which are dug by the adults. And you might actually find it in adult, which is that black dot in the center of the red circle. Typically, we see pine like this exhibit these pitch tubes, but if it happens to be extremely drought stressed, you might not see a pitch response. Pitch is the first thing a tree does to attempt to survive an attack like this. It tries to force the insect out. And the trees can turn rapidly from green to a mix of brown and green in a very short order. You'll notice the center slide there shows a crack in the tree. That's actually a lightning strike. And the lightning strike weakened the tree and drew beetles to it. And the beetles attacked that tree and then from there spread to the surrounding trees in this particular site. This happened to be in New Jersey. Sometimes you'll find a mixture of older and newer pitch tubes on the same tree. You can see the reddish color reflects the older pitch tubes. That means the first generation. There's another one just above it that's probably the second. And by this point, we're into the third generation on this one tree, all within a number of weeks of each other. If you examined under the bark, you'd find these galleries, as I show on the left-hand side. That's where the adults are laying the eggs and repeating the cycle. And if you go through a dissection process, you'll see the S-shaped galleries and the very small white larvae. They're much smaller than grubs. Up in the top next to my title slide, you can see a picture of what they look like. So as they progress, these two oaks that are on this picture here, going from right to left, show you early infestation, the 1 to 2 generations in the middle, and then the tree has pretty much reached the third generation where it is been lost in phase 3. It's on its way to death. You can see all of these pictures in the center. These are all older pitch tubes. And also, if you'll notice next to the name southern pine beetle, there is the blue stain that is being brought to the tree by the beetle to act as food, which can also kill the tree. So it progresses rapidly from red to brown to defoliation. The exit holes from departing insects will be seen. Remember, they would be exit holes with sawdust instead of pitch tubes. The pitch tubes will be older, browner, redder instead of white and soft. And again, you can have as many as 4 to 6 generations as far north as North New Jersey. And the further south you go, the more generations that occur. Used to be, this is how people treated for these insects. Not a particularly effective way. You can imagine how much material you'd waste doing that. not to mention the environmental impact. Um, many chemicals are labeled for them. They all require pretty excellent timing, except for triage, because triage can be done and protect the tree for a couple of years. So you don't necessarily have to time your timing exactly right, as long as you try to time it so that you're not treating the tree after it's dead, which may sound simple, but critical at the time that you treat the tree be when a tree nearby is already showing signs and you don't want to lose this tree. On bark sprays, they've got to occur pre-flight. They're not effective once the pest is in the tree, and they're typically permethrins, bifenthrins, etc. You still have to avoid water streams and lakes. Soil trenches are highly variable because mass attacks can do extensive damage, and beetles tend to do mass attacks. They actually sent out pioneer beetles. The beetle finds a good suitable tree and tells everybody to come and join it, and then all of a sudden the tree gets attacked. And so these soil trenches include things like dinotefuran and imidacloprid. Again, you've got soil conditions affecting results. Not my favorite tool for this particular type of pest. If you use trunk injection, you're going to get 2 years of control with triage. It's ideal to treat uninfested trees if you can. And if you risk having a fungicide, a blue stain fungus issue, Propizol is a good solution that can be a 1-2 punch for those trees. So you can provide both of those on the same day that you're there. Another beetle that attacks trees, Ips engraver beetle. In California alone, there are 25 species of Ips engraver beetles. These insects do very similar damage. It's one of the most destructive species in California. In fact, different Ips attack different parts of the tree based on the height of the tree. It's a bizarre thing. The early signs include dust in the bark on the left-hand side. You can see that. You'll also get exit holes as the beetles leave the tree, which is what you see in the second picture. Pitch tubes as the insects are attempting to enter the tree. And of course, the continual dieback of the tree as the insect continues to do its damage. Once again, the foliage progresses from green to yellow to red or brown. In this particular case, you get one generation in certain mountainous areas, and you might have multiple generations in warmer sites in the west. But Ips engraver beetles attack all the way to the East Coast. This is not specifically for the west. Triage is a solution there. Now you can see in the bottom right-hand side the central mating gallery at the top part and the radiating egg galleries with eggs in them, and they'll have no frass. That's one of the ways you'll know that there is an Ips beetle attack. One of the most common ones we see in the northern part of the country is bronze birch borer. The attack caused a callus formation under the bark. You can see that on the right-hand side where the feeding gallery has occurred and callus is formed. Sometimes you'll see weeping and discoloration on the bark, like on the left-hand side, indicating that the borer is present. Summer heat is one of the biggest factors affecting birch survival the further south you go. In New England, you get up into the mountains and you'll see 12 to 18-inch birch. Down my neck of the woods, you'll see them maybe as large as 6 to 8 inches. And by the time you get to New Jersey, if you've got a birch that's surviving more than 3 years to 5 years, it's a big story. These are understory invader species in forests. They're not suited for sticking out in the front lawn, even if they look pretty. If you can see the bottom center picture, the whole top of this tree has died back. This birch was at about 12 inches in diameter, but it was too far south because the heat of the summer was really stressing it, allowing this bronze birch borer to attack. It's related to the two-line chestnut borer, related to emerald ash borer. They're all part of the Bupressidae family. They leave this D-shaped exit hole. Shallow rooting also affects moisture and heat stress. So if you're not providing mulch to a tree that you're putting in the wrong place, you're ensuring that it's going to get attacked and killed, unless you're living in the mountains. Healthier birch can, in fact, fight off bronze birch borer. All of these products are available. Triage is the longest lasting of them. One of the big ones out west is invasive shothole borer. It's actually two separate species. And you can see the pink and the blue indicating where they are. These are traveling and spreading unrestricted in firewood and pruning material and in nursery stock. They're killing healthy and drought-stressed trees. And they're in numerous counties. They're just spreading everywhere. They attack over 200 species, which is one of the biggest concerns that we have for this particular pest. and it reproduces in over 20 of these species. So it is not only spreading fast, but it can reproduce in many, many trees, and it attacks many more than that. Some of its favorite hosts are California sycamore, oak species, box elder, eucalyptus, alder willow, and maple, with its peak activity during the warmer months where it increases in reproduction, May through October. The biggest concern there is that it also vectors several diseases, so you've got to control both of them when you're treating for this pest. And propofol is the fungicide of choice. This is how tiny this insect is, so you're not going to be noticing this thing wandering around on the tree. It originated in both Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. The mated females bore into the tree. They make numerous small holes, and they create galleries, and there's almost always some kind of weeping that goes on. You'll see the pictures in just a moment, but they always cause weeping in the trees that they drill into. The galleries are then infected with this ambrosia fungi, which the beetles bring into the galleries to feed on, and both the larvae and the adults actually feed on it, and both the beetle and the fungus can kill the tree. Fungus will grow on the walls, spread through the tree, and clog all the vascular transport tissue. 3 separate fungi have been identified: Fusarium, Graphium, and Acremonium. All attack the trees that are being visited by these beetles. You can see here 4 separate trees, 4 separate, totally different looking weeping results. Between the acacia, the sycamore, the box elder, and the avocado, I have another half dozen pictures with completely different weeping symptoms, but it's always some kind of weeping on all trees, this exudate from entrance holes. And treatment is always most effective before anything attacks, or the fewer the attacks, the better, so that the fungus is not spread into the new trees. Again, if there's a tree in your customer's area that gets attacked, the goal here is to treat your customer's trees before the attack occurs. Typically, you'll know it's working when you see a significant reduction in weeping tree fluids. And there are 3 sort of scenarios. If attack is unsuccessful and the beetle is repelled with no fungus introduced, that's a win-win-win. Or if the attack is unsuccessful, the beetle can be repelled, but the fungus might have already been introduced and can still kill the tree. And lastly, if you have a successful attack without intervention, it is likely that the tree is going to die. Another Western pest is related to all of these other bupressidids, the 2-line chestnut borer, emerald ash borer, gold-spotted oak borer is this one. It's a small pest. It attacks primarily oaks. You can see the larva on the bottom left, the adult on the top left. Eggs are laid just like many of the others in bark crevices. The exit holes are D-shaped, but on some of these trees, not only will you have the woodpeckers foraging, but you'll also have weeping on these oak trees. And you can see that on the right-hand side with the bark cracked and weeping. Triage will give you 2 years of control there as well. Then there's a whole group of clear-winged borers. They look like bees. They're actually in the moth family. Lilac ash borer, locust borer. They could be in the same trees, by the way, as things like emerald ash borer are. The 2 different adults are shown on the top left. The 3rd one on the right, from the right on the top, shows an adult exiting the tree. These are round-headed borers, so they leave round or oval-shaped exit holes. You can see that in the second from the left-hand side. So as compared to D-shaped exit holes, these insects leave these irregular holes, and they'll often have sawdust in them. They do considerable damage, but the important thing here is that clear-winged borers typically attack weakened trees instead of healthy trees. They could be present while EAB is there, but remember, you'll see sawdust if it's a roundhead borer. You do not see that with emerald ash borer. They go through complete metamorphosis. An egg is laid, then the larva bores into the bark, sometimes even as deep as the heartwood. Triage will work effectively there. And as you can see, they have a wide range of host species from ash, oak, willow, poplar, maple, peach, apple, black gum, and dogwood. So these are very, very common. Again, they look like bees, but they're moths, clear-winged borers. And that is all I've got on borers. Were there any questions? I know I went a bit quick, but I do value your time, and looks like we have about 8 or 9 minutes left. If there are any questions that came up or that needed answering, is there anything, folks, that I can answer? Trent, anything from your end? Chris, anything from your end?
Good here, Rob.
Thank you. Yeah. So if anyone would like to at this stage, you can go ahead and unmute your microphone, and you can go ahead and ask Trent, Rob, myself, or Jim if he's still with us. Any questions?
Absolutely, that'd be great. If we haven't completely exhausted everybody.
It's usually a good sign when there's not too many questions, a lot of content. So yeah, this was great. I mean, honestly, and I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's session as well. A lot of information here to share and use moving forward with training technicians. You know, I think that there's a great opportunity to encourage a technician that may be relatively new and interested in tree and shrub and this side of the business, to encourage them to take some more education and training on this and be able to develop themselves as well. So hope you've enjoyed today's session. I don't see any questions coming through, so we can go ahead and end it here in a couple of minutes.
Sure. And this will all be available via your network, so you'll be able to offer these segments to whoever may want to listen again. And I will leave my own thought for today is that you know, I started in lawn care in this industry, and what I discovered was there was an infinitely greater opportunity to uncover and solve problems on the tree side. It gave me just a new avenue to take my skill to the next level. And it's something that if you're ready for that, we're ready to help you get there. As I said, tomorrow, we will share with you the contacts for our entire team across the country, so you can reach out directly to them and get support right at the local level. And we're looking forward to helping you in any way we can.